Hello everyone, this is Direwolf20 and welcome to an updated mod spotlight. Today looking at Botania. We've got a lot to cover. Vasky gave me a list of things to demo in Botania for version 1.10 and my head is spinning. The list is huge and it will probably be one of the largest mod spotlights I've ever done. There is so much stuff in Botania. And there's so many different things that you can do with one thing at a time. Like, it's crazy the amount of features that Botania has at this point. Some things have changed from 1.7.10. Some things remain the same. There's definitely been some tweaks and changes that we'll talk about. Those of you who have never played with Botania before, it's a really cool mod. I heavily recommend you guys giving it a chance if you haven't yet. It's basically a tech mod with a magical theme. Pretty much almost everything can be automated by itself or with vanilla features. So you can use any item from a combination of items from Botania and vanilla to automate almost every feature of this mod. And it's just crazy. There's a ton of stuff to talk about. So let's get started looking at what's going on. I'm starting the mod spotlight from scratch, so this is not going to talk about the differences from 1.7.10 to 1.10 because there's so much different. So I'm just doing it like a brand new mod spotlight, like I've been doing a lot for the 1.10 mod base. So we're going to take a look at Botania from the ground up. All right, let's get started. So those of you who haven't used Botania before should know that there is a ton of stuff in there. There's all kinds of really cool toys and gadgets along with a bunch of items. So there's these nifty rods and magical abilities and potions and items and armors and gadgets and just so many cool things that we're going to be taking a look at throughout the series. We'll probably start with the basics to get you up and running with the Botania system, and then later on in the Spotlight episodes, we'll take a look at a bunch of different items. So if you want to learn how to use Botania, it'll be the first episode or two, and then if you want to see all the cool stuff Botania has, it'll be in the next few episodes. But you'll be seeing a few cool things throughout the first ones as well, because there's just some really cool stuff that I want to show you as we go through. One of the first things you'll want to craft for yourself is the Lexica Botania. It's basically a book with any kind of sapling. So two sapling, or a book and a sapling, any sapling in the crafting table, and you've got the Lexica Botania, and you're ready to roll. Open up the book and you'll see a bunch of cool stuff. First off is the main menu. All the things in the Lexica Botania are broken down into different chapters, and we'll be looking through a lot of these as we go through. You'll also notice potentially some things here. If this is flashing, it means that you were using an older version, and you're currently using a newer version since the last time you played, and you can go ahead and check what the changes are by doing a shift-click. And what it'll do is open up a web browser for you, jumping over to Botania's mod change, and you can left-click that to clear it. Couple other things on here. You can have a history tab to see all the things that you've looked up recently, and you can also search down there. Or there's some options for Botania that you can go through, and you'll be able to check a lot of these things out. Obviously, there's a ton of options. I'm not going to cover them all, but basically, you can get an idea of what they are just by basically what their description is. There's a bunch of achievements that Botania has, and there's even some built-in challenges. These are pretty cool to check out. I recommend doing it if you like a challenge. Basically, Vasky said, you know what? There's some things that are pretty tough to do. Some of them are pretty easy, like automating a flower farm. And the idea of these challenges, if you click on the info tab, tells you that the concept is basically, here's some things I want you to automate fully using only Botania and vanilla stuff. So completely automate an animal farm using Botania only and vanilla, or completely automate entropiniums, or completely automate crafting of runes, or an automated quarry. Like, there's all kinds of stuff you can do. It's trickier than other mods, but it's definitely possible. And you can see that they're broken up into 4 categories based on difficulty. Cool. You can also change the scale if you want to have a smaller scale book. Jumping into the different chapters, we'll start with basics and mechanics. You'll see there's a bunch of different items listed here. These are the individual pages in that chapter, and then you can flip through and read what it's about. There's a few other features we'll take a look at as we go through as well. So one of the things you might know is if you have an item in your inventory from Botania, you can hold control on that item, and it'll automatically open up the entry for that. Cool. And if there's an item in the world that's a Botania-based item, so for example, if there's a Botania flower nearby, and if you shift right-click on that item, it'll also open up that chapter. So any item in the world that you see that's a Botania item, you can shift right-click on to see details about it. Couple more things to mention before we get into it. Each page has its own notes section, and you can add notes. So mana tablet, for example, and then you can close and hide those notes. You'll notice there's a red exclamation point when you've made a note on a page, and you can always go back to a different page, and it's a different note section. Cool. So if we go back to the mana tablet, you'll see that red exclamation point. There's the note that we made. Awesome. You can also, at a glance, see what something is. So, for example, if we hold Shift over a page, it first tells you how many pages there. So the mana tablet, it says, is portable mana storage. It shows you the item that it's going to teach you about, and it tells you that there's 1, 2, 3 pages in this little section. So, for example, the pulse mana spreader is a spreader that fires a redstone pulse. There's a bunch of different lenses and 38 pages in this section. So, lots of information in Lexica Botania. Definitely recommend that if you have any questions about the mod as you're playing it, this is the first place you go. There's also an index that shows all the different items available, and this is searchable. So, for example, if you want to see all the rings, for example, or if you want to see all the baubles, there you go, bauble case, anything with BA. Pretty neat. Band, for example. Good stuff. So definitely check out the Lexica Botania. There's a few other features, like I said, that we'll probably see with this. But let's get started with the mod. So one of the first things that you're going to want to do, if you're flipping through the tutorial and how to get started section, is you need to find some flowers. If you go exploring around your world, you'll definitely find a few of these things just laying around. If you don't find them laying around, or if you're playing in a skyblock or something like that, you can actually get some. So here's some in the distance over here. Ta-da! There are your mystical lime flowers. You'll notice they have a couple little particle effects. So there's kind of your basics. You can get those lime flowers, and there's one for each color of the Minecraft rainbow, so 16 different versions of those flowers. Another option is to make yourself some floral fertilizer. It's basically bone meal with 2 dandelion yellow and 2 rose red. You can also use any of the floral powder, which we'll see how to make in a moment. This, you simply right-click on the ground, ta-da, and you'll get some floral stuff. Nice. Pretty cool, right? Now you can pick these flowers up just by regularly clicking on them, and if you turn them into petals in a crafting table, you'll get 2. Another option is to bone meal it. In this case, you get a tall version of flower, which can only be picked up with shears. When you get the tall version of the flower, see how it says tall mystical magenta, you get 4 petals. So if you're looking to get more of a certain type, make sure to bone meal the flower and then hit it with shears to pick it up. Cool. And you'll get the tall version, which gives you more petals. Nice. Another way to get those talls, by the way, is to go ahead and bury some petals. So right-click on the ground, and you'll notice that there's a little bit of a sparkle there. It placed one of my mystical light blue petals. You can bone meal that to get another tall version of the plant, which you can then shear and get yourself 4 more petals. Nice. So that's a nice way to just get lots more petals once you've gotten at least one type. Or like I said, use the floral fertilizer. These petals then can be ground down into dusts using the pestle and mortar. Simply place them in a crafting table together, and you get 1 powder of it. This is basically a dye, and you can use it like any other dye. If you want to look up the entry in the Lexica Botania, you're more than welcome to. Cool? So those dyes can then be used to make more floral fertilizer, or like any other type of dye that you would normally use it for. You can also use vanilla flowers to get dyes from them as well. Cool. You can use these dyes to, for example, right-click on wool to change colors and all kinds of other similar stuff. So basically, these are all the different dyes that are available in Minecraft, the same 16 colors. The petals are then used to make a bunch of flowers. So before you get started using the flower petals and all that stuff, you'll probably want to get yourself a flower pouch, which you can see the entry for here. Basically, any 5 pieces of wool and any flower petal will get you the flower pouch. And what this does is when you pick items up in the world that are flowers, they'll automatically go inside the pouch. So instead of going into your inventory, they land inside the pouch, which is cool. And you'll notice that there is a separate line for each. So even if you don't have any white flowers, for example, like we have right now, it'll say 0 there, but there's still an inventory slot for it. But there's your orange pouch, and you can take them in and out as you please. You can also shift-click to get them out as much as you want. Cool. The petal apothecary is the next step for you. This is what you use to combine petals into magical flowers. There are many, many kinds of magical flowers in this mod. There are some flowers that generate mana, which is basically a form of power. So it's mana is what you use to power some of the things that you're going to make in the future. And then there's functional flora, which do cool things using mana. There's also items that use mana and other kinds of stuff that we'll talk about as we get throughout the series. But to get started, you're basically going to want to use the petal apothecary. Now, there's a couple different features we should show you here. First off, the petal apothecary needs water. So you're going to want to get yourself a water bucket and simply right-click on it. Cool. Then you're going to need to get yourself the right flower. Now you can either use a JEI lookup. So for example, let's take a look at the pure daisy. Probably one of the flowers you're going to want to make first. Cool. You'll notice that it requires 4 mystical white petals inside the petal apothecary. You can also see here, if you hold control, it'll also bring up the pure daisy's entry in the Lexica Botania, again, if you have the Lexica Botania on your hotbar. Neat. The pure daisy is something we're going to see how it works in a minute, but you'll notice that inside the book here, it's also going to show you the recipe, and you can hold shift to stop the animation there. Cool. Also note that you can shift click on an item inside here to see the recipe for that item. So to get started, we're going to need to drop 1, 2, 3, 4 flowers inside here. You'll notice now that when you're looking in there, A, you can see the flowers floating around inside, but B, there's a little mouse over that shows that you've got 4 mystical white petals inside the petal apothecary, and it tells you that this is a valid recipe that's going to create a flower. That's what the little check mark on the arrow means. And if you drop a single piece of vanilla seeds in there, boom, it's going to automatically craft it. Nice. Now if you go ahead and shift click with an empty hand, right click with an empty hand to place back the last recipe. So if you're making a bunch of these things, just right click with an empty hand. Neat. All you need to do is fill it back up with a bucket and then right click with an empty hand. It'll place the same recipe back in. It's a nice way to make multiple of the same flower. So you can either do that or you can drop the items in again. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now you can see it's valid. We'll drop seeds. Pretty much all your flowers are crafted this way, and there's a ton of different flowers available, many of which we'll be seeing throughout the series. Some of the flowers require more expensive items, some do not. Another feature of the petal apothecary is you can place lava in it, and now instead of creating items, it can destroy them. So any items that get dropped in there are automatically destroyed. I don't need these buckets anymore. See you later. Nice. And again, all this is documented inside the Lexica Botania. You can also throw vines on there to give it a little bit of a visual look. Comparators can detect whether the block has water or not. And then there's also some other tricks you can do to automatically fill it with water. The next step for the budding botanist will be to place down the pure daisy. What this does is the pure daisy, again, we can hold control to look up the recipe or the instructions in the manual. It's going to convert wood and stone into living wood and living rock. These are basic components. So if we look up in JEI over here, the word living, we'll see that there's living wood that can craft a whole bunch of important things. And then there's also living stone, which is used to craft a whole bunch of important things. These are all very basic items that are required. So once you've got your pure daisy, simply place items around it in the 3x3 block space. So in total, you can have 8 items around your pure daisy, either oak wood or stone. Cool? And after 1 minute, these will be converted. Let's come back. While we wait for these items to convert, it should be noted, oh, there they go, they're starting to convert now. So the stone just converted, and there goes the wood. Nice. Should be noted that the pure daisy can also convert a couple other things. So for example, it can convert netherrack to cobblestone, soul sand into sand, ice into packed ice, and water into snow. Neat. So now that we've got these items, we can go ahead and harvest them. And of course, since living wood is a form of wood, you're going to want an axe to clear it. And living stone requires a drill or a pickaxe. Nice. If you want to make more of this stuff, it's as simple as placing it down. You can place it in any combination, so you can place 8 wood or 8 stone around it, or you can place 2 stone and 6 wood, whatever you want, right? Just as long as it's around that. And of course, you can have multiple of these in the world, so if you want another set over here, not a problem. Now that we've got some living wood, we're able to make a wand of the forest. Most tech mods have a wrench of some form. This is basically the wrench of Botania. It's the tool that you're going to use to interact with all the different devices in Botania, and it's very much useful. So how do you make it? It's really easy. Simply get yourself some living wood twigs, which by the way are 2 living woods on top of each other. So you're gonna need a total of like 6 living wood, right? And then you combine it together. So wand of the forest shown here can be pretty much 3 twigs with any 2 petals. It doesn't matter what colors they are. Neat. I've gone ahead and made a basic one, which is with 2 white petals. Easy. Now that we've got that, we can start getting into some more advanced stuff. We've started talking about mana already, which is basically the power source of this mod. Many of the cool things that you're going to be able to make and play with are going to require mana to use. And in order to store mana, we're going to need a mana pool. It's basically a little block that can store X amount of mana. We're going to take a look at how mana works right now. So there's actually two forms of mana pools. The weaker diluted variety stores a very small amount of mana, and then there's the normal variety, which can store as much as 100 times more than the diluted one. Pretty cool. Mana pool is basically where we're going to store stuff. To make a mana pool, we need 5 living rock, which we just learned how to make. And to get a diluted mana pool, we need 5 living rock slabs, which pretty much, as you would expect, are made just like regular slabs. Cool. Mana pools do more than just store mana. They're also used as a crafting mechanic. There's actually several crafting mechanics in Botania. The petal apothecary is one. Technically, the simple or pure daisy is another one. The mana pool is now a third. You drop items into the mana pool, and you'll wind up getting the infused version of it. So, for example, iron can turn into mana steel. Ender pearls turn into mana pearls. Diamonds turn into mana diamonds, etc., etc. Pretty cool. There's a bunch of different things that we're going to be checking out throughout the series, and a lot of them are going to be crafted via the mana pool. Just drop the item in, and you'll get the appropriate item out. We'll see that in a moment. First, however, we need to have some mana in the pool, so we're going to have to go ahead and get ourselves some mana. The only way to generate mana is with some flowers called generating flora. There are several types of flowers that you can see here. There are other flowers that are going to be unlocked later on in the mod, which we'll see in the future. For now, we've got a handful of options. We'll take a look at a couple of the basic ones. Some of the other ones are going to require advanced items that we haven't figured out how to make yet. Your basic starting flowers, you have two options. There's the hydrangea and the endoflame. Hydrangeas are basically a passive-based flower that generates mana using water. It'll suck up any still water in a 3x3 area around it on the same height level, creating mana from it. And obviously, as we know, vanilla Minecraft mechanics allow for water to be replaced automatically. So this is very easy to automate. It's also noted that they seem to function faster during rain. Pretty cool. Hydrangeas are fleeting flora and will decay after 1 hour of real-world time. This means that every time you place down a hydrangea, it's going to start to decay, and it'll eventually decay after 1 hour. There is no config option to disable this. Those who are familiar with the 1.7.10 version of Botania might be wondering where the flower that generates mana from the sun is, or darkness. Well, those two flowers have been removed completely. So, there you go. No longer exist. Sorry, guys. You're going to have to build some cool automation systems instead of just planting down solar flowers and letting them passively generate. Like I said, hydrangeas are one of the few passively generating flowers, and they decay over time. So let's give hydrangeas a try, shall we? So hydrangeas are pretty easy to make. I'm not going to go through the process of crafting them. It's simply 2 mystical blue petals and 2 cyan petals in the pool. Once you've got your hydrangeas, we'll get 4 of them, we can set up a simple little water system. A simple version of this is shown here. Simply build a 3x3 pool of water with flowers in the corners. So we'll do that right now. There are more efficient ways to do this, by the way. Simply plant down your hydrangeas, and they should start sucking up the water nearby. Cool, and you'll see they're working because they've got little particle effects going on them. Nice. Another thing you can do is right-click with your Wand of the Forest, and you'll see them filling up their internal buffer of mana. So right now, these flowers are starting to generate mana. They have a small internal buffer that they can hold. Once they're full, they'll stop producing any more mana. Every time you right-click with the Wand of the Forest, it'll update. This mod doesn't send you many updates. You have to ask for them a lot of the time. So right-clicking on the flowers, for example, will update what's currently in them. One of the things you're seeing, though, is a red X on a block. This is the mana spreader. This is how we transfer mana from a flower into a mana pool. Okay? In order to get a mana spreader, we have to craft it. Luckily, it's pretty easy to craft a basic mana spreader. Simply some of that living wood that we found, a gold ingot, and any color flower petal. Nice. Once we've got a mana spreader, we basically place it in the world, like so. And we place a mana pool somewhere in front of it. What the mana spreader does is it receives mana from flowers or from other mana pools, which we'll see in a minute, and it'll create what's called a mana burst. And it'll send the mana, using a particle effect, into a target. In this case, it's going to head for the mana pool. If you place down your flowers, your hydrangeas for example, it will automatically link to the nearest spreader in the world. Notice how there's a green check mark now. Cool. This is running, and it no longer has an internal buffer of mana. Where's it all going? It's going into the mana spreader. Once the mana spreader has built up enough mana, it's going to go ahead and send it into that pool. You can see with these green particle effects, the direction that the mana burst will send. If you don't have the wand on your hotbar, you won't see those particle effects except when the mana burst occurs. You'll notice that the mana spreader just emptied itself. Every time it gets up to a certain point of mana, it's going to send that mana into the pool. Now there's a small amount of mana in the pool. So again, just wait a little bit and there'll be a mana burst, and it'll send some mana into the pool and you'll get a small amount. Regular mana pools can store a lot of mana, so it's going to take a long time to fill this. If you place down your mana spreader after your flowers, in the example here, you'll see this red X, saying that this flower is not linked to any kind of mana spreader. Simply shift right click on the flower and then shift right click on the spreader, and it will link them. And now all the mana will go into the mana spreader. Cool. We'll do this for the other 3 as well. Now, all 4 of our hydrangeas are sending their mana directly into the spreader. Nice. And it's generating mana. And storing it in the pool. The diluted mana pool has a much smaller buffer. And if you want to change the direction, we simply shift right-click the mana spreader and aim it at a different location. Now, any mana bursts will go along this path and land inside the diluted mana pool. And you'll see the diluted mana pool start to fill up. Nice. You'll notice after 2 mana bursts, we've already got a decent amount of mana in here. This doesn't hold much, this holds a ton. You can see after a short period of time, we've already got this diluted mana pool a quarter of the way full. Nice. I'm going to retarget this at the regular mana pool now. If you want to transfer mana from one pool to the next, it's not a big deal. Simply place down your pool, like so, and place down your spreader facing it. And it'll automatically extract mana from the pool behind it and send it along its path into the pool in front of it. Or what other items you might be sending the mana to. Some items can receive mana bursts and do certain things with them. You might have noticed that there's a sound effect when the mana spreader sends its mana into the world. If you want, you can place a piece of wool on it simply by right-clicking it with wool. That'll muffle it. Nice. No longer creates any sound. Mana pools, by the way, can also be dyed with any floral color. Simply right-click on them, and it'll change the color of the mana pool. This might be nice if you want to go ahead and use the color to indicate what kind of pool it is. So maybe you might have red for like an extra buffer or something like that. There's definitely some uses for this. It's also nice for decoration. So these hydrangeas are nice for early game and free power, but they're definitely slow. You'll notice we've barely made a dent in this mana pool. This has actually been running for a little bit. So let's take a look at the next early game flower. So let's take a look at the Endoflame. Neat. Basically, the Endoflame will consume items that you can normally burn in a furnace, with a small caveat. So this can eat things like coal and wood and blocks of coal. It can't eat things that give back a byproduct. So example, lava buckets, since they give back empty buckets as a byproduct, won't work. The flower can only hold the equivalent of 4 times of a block of coal, so it can't hold that much itself. Cool. So you need to not use some like crazy mod that adds something that has like 1,000 times the burn rate of coal. That won't work. So there's definitely a limit on how much power this thing can generate. So the Endoflame is easy to make. Let's take a look. Simply place it in the world, and then drop something that can be burned on it. For example, coal or wood. Simply drop wood, and it'll eat the item. Nice. And then it starts, as we can see here, it's already linked to the mana spreader, so the mana spreader is getting its mana, and you can see that this is filling up its mana burst a little bit faster. When the flames disappear, it means it's done eating up that item, and you can drop another one down. There it goes. It won't pick up another item until it's finished with the first one. So having an item sitting there on the ground is fine, except that item might disappear if the flower takes a while to burn it. A good example of this might be with coal blocks. So for example, coal will last a lot longer than wood, so placing another piece of coal down, it's going to be a while before that coal is eaten up. This is actually relatively easy to automate early game. There's a couple items you can use. You can use the vanilla dropper, or you can use an item called the open crate. The open crate is a really nice item from Botania, and you can see that there's a Lexica Botania entry for it. Basically works just like a dropper, but it's much more precise and fast. So basically, place the open crate in the world. The open crate does not have a UI, so there's no way to interact with it directly. However, if you pipe items into it, for example with a hopper, you'll notice that it'll automatically drop them on the ground. No redstone signal required. Just as soon as an item lands in its UI, or its lack of UI, let's say, it'll automatically just drop it in the world. Straight down, by the way. I don't know if you've ever used vanilla droppers, but they tend to drop items all over the place. This thing will always drop items directly onto the ground, right below the block, which is awesome. Remember, though, that the endoflame won't pick up further items unless it's done eating what it's already got. So doing this is a bit wasteful. You're going to need to figure out a way to stop this from dropping. Hint, it's pretty easy. Little tip for you, you don't have to drop the coal directly on top of the flower. It'll pick it up from a short distance away. Now that we've got a little bit of mana, it's actually pretty easy to craft with. Hold an item in your hand and it'll give you a green check mark if you've got enough mana to craft with it. If you don't have enough mana to craft with it, you'll see a red X here. Then just drop the item on the mana pool. It'll use up some of the mana in the pool and create the ingot. Nice. So for example, if we got ourselves a bunch more ingots, or if we got ourselves some iron, you'll notice that it's probably not going to have enough to make this guy. Definitely too much mana. We can make a few more mana steel. Neat. But eventually we'll run out. And we're going to have to wait for more mana to be produced before we can craft further. Again, shift-click with the Botania book to see all the different things that you can craft. Many of these things are going to be required. Portable transportation of mana comes by way of a mana tablet. The mana tablet is crafted with 8 living rock and either a mana pearl or a mana diamond. Your choice which one you want to put down. If you look at the pool with your Wand of the Forest in your hand, you'll see that there is a tablet with an arrow to the pool. That means that in its current configuration, it will drain mana out of a tablet and place it in the pool. So for example, if we had a full tablet on hand and we drop the tablet here, you'll notice that the energy lines are flowing into the pool, and the pool is starting to fill up with mana. Nice. The tablet is being drained. Conversely, if you shift right click with it, the wand on the pool, you'll notice it'll reverse directions. Now the pool will fill up the tablet, and we can simply drop the tablet on the pool, and as you right click, you'll notice that the particle effects are going up into the tablet, and the tablet is getting filled up. The pool is now empty, and the tablet has a bunch of mana. Sweet. There's also an uncraftable creative mana tablet. You'll notice that there's no recipe for this one. It's basically if you're in a creative world and you want infinite mana. Many of the items that we're going to see in the nearby future are going to require mana from your mana tablet in your inventory. Let's take a look at one or two of those now. This cool armor that I'm wearing is known as Mana Steel armor. It's basically about as good as iron, however it has some neat things. For example, if you have the full set, 10% less mana cost. These are made as you might expect, simply using mana steel in the recipes that you're familiar with for armor. Cool. And you can bring up the control tab here to see some neat information. There's also tool versions. So there's mana steel pickaxe and axe and shovel, etc. You might notice here, for example, there's some extra abilities on the tools, like the pickaxe can place a torch from your inventory, and the axe will do the same for a sapling, a shovel will till the earth. Nice. All the recipes are you might expect, except using living wood twigs instead of sticks, and mana steel ingots instead of iron. And all the recipes are pretty similar. The cool thing about these is what happens when they receive damage. For example, a spider is currently damaging me, and my armor is being damaged. Oh, my durability is dropping. Let's get rid of this spider. What can we do with this stuff? Well, what's cool is, first off, let's fill up our tablet. We're going to make sure that this is set to fill up the tablet from the mana pool. The armor will automatically repair itself using the mana from your inventory. Nice! So you'll notice all of a sudden, very quickly, my Mana Steel stuff went ahead and got repaired. It used some of the mana in the mana tablet to repair the armor, which is cool. Mana Steel, like I said, has similar durability and protection to iron, so pretty much the same that iron would have. There is a diamond version of the armor that we'll see later, and it's got, I think, better enchantability than iron, though. The same repair mechanic exists on your tools. So for example, if we got ourselves a Mana Steel shovel and we were to dig with it, nice. If we didn't have a mana tablet in our inventory, it would take damage, but once we got some mana, it would go ahead and repair itself using the mana in the tablet. Cool. One other thing to mention about the tablet is that it does add to your experience bar a nice little blue glow. You can see it on the bottom left. It shows roughly how much mana you have. The mana tablet does not need to be on your hotbar for it to function, so it'll still function from inside your inventory. Doesn't need to be on the hotbar, like I said, and you'll see how much mana you currently have available on that tablet, again, on that little hotbar down there. It's right, that little blue glowing thing near your experience levels. And with that, guys, I think we've reached a good wrapping up part for the first part of the Botania Spotlight. Cool? So there's a bunch of stuff that we covered today. We covered a couple different mechanics. We covered a couple different ways to craft. We covered how to generate mana, how to transfer mana using the mana spreader, and how to deal with the mana pool to store mana. There's way more complexity to this stuff than we've seen thus far. We haven't seen mana lenses yet, which can be placed on the mana spreader to alter its functionality. And there's a ton of them that add a whole bunch of different features to it. And there's different things we can do with the mana pool. We also haven't seen how to use the runic altar, which is another crafting mechanic that Botania offers. So there's a lot still to look at. Then there's a ton of items and gadgets. So I think this is a good introduction. It should get you started. So those of you who have never used Botania before should have a pretty good starting off point. Once you've gone through the tutorial here and figured out how to get the basics of mana production up and running, you should be ready for the next step, which will come in part 2. For now, Darwell20 signing off. Hope you enjoyed part 1 of the Botania Mod Spotlight. For now, take it easy.